Dobry At the end of World War II, Milovan Djilas, the political officer of Tito's Yugoslav communist partisans, was in that party's delegation to Moscow, where they met Joseph Stalin. During the course of that meeting, Stalin told the Yugoslavs, allegedly, that this war will not be like the wars of the past. Now each power must impose its own social system as far as its armies can reach. As anecdotal as that sounds, it's nevertheless true that is how post-war liberated Europe subsequently developed. As Soviet troops pushed westward, rolling Axis forces all the way back to Berlin, the Western Allies, the UK and US, subsequently moved south from France, north from Italy, and met in Western Germany. And indeed, both armies, Eastern and Western, did impose their social forms on the nations they liberated. While the Soviets were interested in broad and deep social transformations so that the old ruling order could never again be a threat to them, the Western conquerors were interested in reconstructing that old pre-war order. Since the forces of fascism had not been brutal occupiers or genocidal maniacs in the West, there was little desire on the part of London or Washington for vengeance, but rather to reintegrate these old forces back into the fold of respectable Western civilization if they just play along with the conqueror's democratic forms and massive capital investments. Thus, the Marshall Plan rebuilt Western Germany with U.S. taxpayers' dollars. Boy, that choked me up. While Soviet forces in the East engaged in ethnic cleansing, rape, and looting of industrial infrastructure. The promise of post-war liberation, we're told, was betrayed by these red hordes from the East, imposing their self-interested satellite regimes regardless of their people's thoughts or wishes about it, even if most of them had no oil. What savages. And so this evil empire collapsed a couple generations later into the asshole of history, as it was destined to do. Only, in all the Western gloating over the demise of their wartime ally and its post-war order, it's conveniently forgotten that the Western allies betrayed the peoples and nations under their military yoke. The masses of Europe, lying filthy and hungry in their rubble and ruins, saw this as the final physical wreckage of the old society of property and privilege that had built it, by exploiting their labor and lives. That from this ruination would, could, should, must arise a new society, not only of material plenty, but of social justice, as well as political freedom for all of its people. This was the heart's desire of the resistance forces in France, Italy, and Greece, in the still captive nations of Spain and Portugal, and in all zones of Germany, though fear of reprisal severely tempered German hopes for a place in the future Europe. Well, those social democratic hopes weren't to be in Western as well as Eastern Europe. The upsurge of post-war democracy was beaten back in all of liberated Western Europe by ballot box or bullet, just as in the East. The pre-war capitalist order, sufficiently purged and reformed of fascism, was given its facelift, its renovation, and put back on its vacated pedestal. Just as the Soviets repressed guerrillas in Poland and rigged elections in Romania, so did the U.S. repress insurgents in Greece and pull all its old Tammany tricks in Italy, while Spaniards and Portuguese were left to rot in their old fascist cages because these too could be reintegrated in total into the post-war West of capital. So, what we now see in Western and Mediterranean Europe is the final, delayed, second implosion of the post-war order. In reconstructing the old Western Europe and kicking away the last traces of social democracy, the European order has only reconstructed the failure of the gold standard and class rule of the 1920s, which led to depression, fascism, and war. In dancing over the ruins of socialism from the Danube to the Volga, the capitalists and their hired politicians did not appreciate how close to the cliff they stood themselves, that their own social system was destined for its own fall, and twice in the last 100 years. We see how capitalist prosperity is working in practice, the imposition of austerity, meaning mass poverty for the unimportant little people, so the bankers and investors can keep the wheels of profit turning for themselves. Thus, the coming collapse of European post-war capitalism has two possible alternatives. A recreation of depression, fascism, and war. After the fall of Rome came the Middle Ages, and maybe after the fall of the NATO empire of the Central European banks, we'll see Spain turn into former Yugoslavia, or unified Germany disintegrate like an old brick wall, as in the former East. Or maybe NATO will simply barge into Greece, occupying it for the bankers of Berlin, imposing austerity by bayonet, as in the great Athens famine of 1941, and the cycle of Western bankruptcy will have made its complete return. Or there could be the rehabilitation of those betrayed post-war hopes of its people for social democracy and social justice, along with political liberty and personal freedom, that the long-delayed and often betrayed promises of 1945 now have the opportunity for realization as they re-emerge again from the rubble of post-war pipe dreams. Maybe this time, the people of Italy, Greece, and France can join with the people of Poland, the Czechland, or Serbia and find their own solution. That can begin only by offering a definitive no to outside powers and interests, and a no-nonsense no to their collaborators and quislings. Uh-oh. Hello? Who's this? MI6? Homeland Security? FBI? Who? Angela Merkel? Chancelloress of the Greater German Reich? What brings you over always? What's that? You resent my comparison of the Western order of things to the collapse of your old East German homeland? Well, why shouldn't it go the same way? You were Helmut Kohl's quizzling agent in post-Cold War East Germany, just like Walter Ulbricht was Stalin's man in post-Hot War East Germany. It must look democratic, but we must be in control. Remember that one? The Western bankers raped and looted East Germany as surely as did the Soviet Army, and now you're hoping to extend their reach over all East Europa, to make the whole continent one big bargain basement East Germany. But maybe this time you'll face people with backbone who can throw you off, put the Eurobankers into the unemployment line to experience the austerity, that is, poverty, they force on others, and kick your damn ass all the way back to Berlin, and impose their own social system, at last, as far as their feet can reach.